Kumasi came alive with the first rays of sunlight. The hum of traders' voices mingled with the clatter of cartwheels and the roar of old motorcycles weaving through narrow streets. Morning light filtered through a thin haze, bathing the Kejetiah Market in bright gold. It was the city's largest market, a labyrinth of hundreds of stalls selling everything: piles of red peppers, baskets of mangoes and pineapples, bundles of dried fish that filled the air with a salty tang. Traders shouted praises for their goods, children darted through the crowd, and the scents of spices, cinnamon, ginger, pepper, blended with the aroma of fried food from street vendors. Jacob Wilson strode through this noisy chaos with familiar confidence. His dark blue suit and polished leather shoes stood out sharply against the locals in vibrant fabrics and worn clothing. At 38, he was a man who knew what he wanted and usually got it. His company, Golden Branch, a palm oil producer, had grown from a small family business into one of the region's top suppliers in just 5 years. Today, he wasn't here on business. He simply wanted to breathe in the living, pulsing rhythm of Kumasi, the city he'd loved since childhood. Jacob paused at a fabric stall, eyeing the vivid kente patterns, traditional cloths woven with gold, green, and red threads in intricate geometric designs. An elderly vendor with a wrinkled face and a sly glint in her eye perked up immediately. "Sir, is this for your wife? Or a girlfriend?" she teased, winking as she held up a piece of fabric resembling sun rays. Jacob chuckled, shaking his head. "Neither. Just looking." "A man like you shouldn't be alone," she scolded, wagging a finger, but he'd already turned away with a polite smile. Loneliness. The word clung to him like a splinter, though he never spoke it aloud. He had friends, business partners, endless dinners at restaurants with white tablecloths and expensive wines. There were women, too, beautiful, confident, with perfect hair and designer dresses. But they all wanted the same thing: money, status, connections. None saw the longing behind his polished facade, a yearning for something real, something money or ambition couldn't buy. He brushed the thought aside and moved on, weaving through the crowd. A few steps away, Emily Johnson struggled with a heavy basket of groceries. Her thin arms trembled under the weight of yams, tomatoes, a bag of dried peppers, and a bunch of plantains she'd bought for Golden Sunset, an upscale restaurant in central Kumasi, where she worked as a cook's assistant. At 24, Emily was nearly invisible, short, with dark eyes that held a mix of determination and weariness, dressed in a simple cotton skirt faded from washing. Her hair was pulled into a tight bun to keep it out of the kitchen's heat. She dreamed of more, opening her own cafe where she could cook her own recipes, or at least becoming a head chef. But life kept her pinned down. Money barely covered rent for her tiny room and support for her younger brothers, Kofi and Kwesi, still in school. Their mother had died 3 years ago from illness, leaving Emily as the family's backbone, her dreams deferred. Emily stopped to shift the basket to her other hand when someone accidentally bumped her from behind. She stumbled, the basket tipped, and a few tomatoes spilled onto the ground, rolling underfoot. One, bright, red, glossy, came to a stop at Jacob's shoes. He bent down, picked it up, and scanned the crowd for its owner. His gaze landed on Emily, now on her knees, gathering the fallen produce. Her face flushed with embarrassment, a few strands of hair escaping her bun and falling across her forehead. "Is this yours?" he asked, holding out the tomato. His voice was deep, slightly husky, more curious than annoyed. Emily looked up, and froze. This man in an expensive suit seemed like he'd wandered in from another world. She nodded, mumbling, "Yes, thank you." "Sorry, it was an accident." "No problem," Jacob replied, but instead of walking away, he crouched beside her and started helping. "It's too crowded here to hold on to everything." Emily stared at him, surprised. Her first instinct was to refuse. She was used to managing alone, but something in his manner, an unexpected simplicity, stopped her. "You don't have to," she began, but he cut in. "I'm not obligated. I just want to." They gathered everything in a minute: tomatoes, yams, a couple of plantains nearly crushed in the bustle. Jacob stood, brushing off his hands, and Emily followed, gripping the basket tighter. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice more wary than grateful. She wasn't used to help from strangers, especially not from someone like him, confident, with an expensive watch and the faint scent of cologne cutting through the market's aromas. "I'm Jacob," he said, extending a hand. She hesitated, but shook it. His palm was warm, slightly rough despite his polished look. "Emily," she replied, quickly pulling her hand back. He nodded, as if committing her name to memory, and was about to say more when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen, frowned, and sighed. "Business calls," he said with a faint smirk. "Glad to help, Emily." She nodded, and he disappeared into the crowd. Emily watched him go, feeling an odd mix of emotions. This man was a stranger, but his gaze lingered in her mind. Jacob returned to his office, a modern glass and steel building in Kumasi's business district. The windows overlooked noisy streets where motorcycles and old trucks fought through traffic. His day was packed: meetings with suppliers, negotiations for a new contract with stores in Accra, calls with investors. His secretary, Linda, a young woman with a neat hairstyle, waited with a folder of documents and a cup of black coffee. "Your partner from Tarkwa called 3 times, she said, handing over the papers. "Says raw material prices are up again." "Let him wait," Jacob replied, settling at his dark wooden desk. "I'll handle it." He dove into work, signing contracts, arguing over the phone, reviewing reports. But his thoughts kept drifting to the girl from the market, Emily. Her quiet voice, her guarded look. She wasn't like the women he usually met, those chasing his attention for money or status. There was something real about her. He leaned back in his chair, staring out at the city lights. Why had he stopped to help? It wasn't his style to waste time on random people. But her awkwardness, the way she tried to hide her embarrassment, hooked him. Jacob smirked to himself. "You're getting sentimental," he thought. Meanwhile, Emily returned to Golden Sunset. The kitchen was already buzzing. Cooks shouted at each other, knives chopped against boards, oil sizzled in pans. The smell of fried fish and spicy peanut soup filled the air. She jumped into work, peeling vegetables, chopping herbs, tending boiling pots. Her boss, Chef Kwame, a stern man with thick brows, shot her a glance. "Where were you so long? Customers don't wait for your yams all day." "Sorry, Kwame, the market was crowded," she replied, eyes down. He grumbled and turned away. Emily was used to his sharpness. Work at the restaurant was tough, but it paid better than the street joints where she'd started. Her shift dragged on, peeling potatoes, kneading dough for flatbreads, fetching spices from the pantry. Kwame kept her running non-stop, and by midday her hands shook from exhaustion. Yet even in the chaos, she thought of Jacob. Why had he helped her? What did he want? She shook her head, pushing the questions aside, and focused on work. By evening, the restaurant filled up. Wealthy businessmen in suits, tourists with cameras, local officials with loud voices, all came for pricey dishes and prestige. Emily glimpsed them through the kitchen door's crack as she carried plates of fried tilapia and peanut-spiced soup. Then her eyes caught a familiar figure. Jacob. He sat at a corner table with two men in suits, laughing over a glass of red wine. Their gazes met for a split second, and he gave her a slight nod, as if recalling their morning encounter. Emily turned away fast, her heart pounding. What was he doing here? Of course, people like him ate at places like this. But why was she even thinking about it? He was just a passerby. Still, all evening she caught herself sneaking glances his way. Once, she nearly dropped a tray of plates when Kwame barked at her for being slow. The next day, Jacob found himself back at Kejetiah Market. He wasn't sure why he'd come, maybe to escape work, maybe hoping to see her again. He wandered the stalls, buying mangoes and a bag of spices he didn't need. His driver, Amos, waited in the car nearby, but Jacob insisted on walking. Then he spotted her. Emily stood by a fish vendor, picking out supplies for the restaurant. Her basket was half full, and she haggled, trying to shave a few cedis off the price. "Dropping tomatoes again?" he asked, stepping closer with a slight smile. She flinched, turned, and nearly lost her basket again. Recognizing him, she gave an embarrassed smile. "No, I'm more careful today." "Good, 'cause I'm not always around to save the day," he winked. Emily didn't know how to respond. His confidence threw her off, but there was something genuine in him. They started talking, first about the market, then food. She mentioned working at Golden Sunset, and he nodded. "I was there last night. Great food. Do you cook?" "No, just assist. But I want to learn more," she said, a spark of passion in her voice. Jacob noticed it. He liked how her eyes lit up when she talked about cooking. Then he suggested, "Show me what you can do. Maybe we could cook something together." Emily looked at him, skeptical. This man in a fancy suit wanted to cook with her? But he seemed serious. "I'll think about it," she said finally. He grinned wider. "I'll find you again, Emily. Kumasi's not that big." She watched him leave, a warmth stirring in her chest. This stranger's words felt like a promise. For the first time in years, she wondered if her dreams might not be so out of reach. Jacob returned to his office, but he was distracted all day. His partners noticed, during a supplier meeting, he missed 2 questions, and Linda asked if he was sick. He waved it off, but his mind was on Emily. Her modesty, her quiet strength. She wasn't from his world, and that drew him in more. That evening, he sat in his spacious apartment with a city view, sleek furniture, a stocked bar, but he felt out of place. He poured a glass of whiskey, but didn't drink, staring at Kumasi's lights. Emily got home after her shift, a tiny room with a worn mattress, a table, and an old radio. Her brothers, 14-year-old Kofi and 16-year-old Kwesi, slept on a blanket in the corner. She ate leftover market flatbreads quietly and lay down, but sleep wouldn't come. She thought of Jacob, his smile, how he looked at her. It was silly. He was rich, successful. She was nobody. But his words sparked something in her. Maybe he'd come back. A week passed. Jacob avoided the market, convincing himself it was a one-off encounter. But by Friday, he couldn't resist. He told Amos he had business downtown and ended up at Kejetiah. Emily was there, buying spices, her basket fragrant with coriander and ginger. Seeing him, she froze, then smiled, genuinely this time. "You really came back," she said. "Promised I would," he replied. They walked along the stalls, chatting about small things. He bought her a mango. She insisted he try fried fish with pepper from a vendor. They laughed when he burned his tongue on the spicy sauce, and for the first time in ages, Jacob felt light. Emily relaxed too. His presence no longer intimidated her, stirring curiosity instead. Who was he? Why did he look at her like she was the only person in the market? That evening, he walked her to the minibus stop. Before leaving, he said, "Let's meet somewhere besides the market. Saturday. I know a spot with the best soup in Kumasi. Come." Emily hesitated, but nodded. "Okay, I'll come." He left, and she stood watching, feeling for the first time in years that her life might change. Saturday in Kumasi began with its usual clamor. Streets filled with people, traders balancing baskets on their heads, motorcycles honking through traffic, vendors frying fish and flatbreads over charcoal grills, the air thick with smoke and spices. Jacob woke early in his high-rise apartment. He stood at the wide window, gazing at the city, a mix of old homes with rusty tin roofs and new glass and concrete offices. Today, he skipped his usual suit for a dark green short-sleeve shirt and dark pants, expensive but understated. He was surprised by his own excitement. Meeting Emily, a simple cook's assistant from Golden Sunset, shouldn't have mattered this much. He was used to women from his circle, polished, calculating, with flawless makeup and designer bags. But Emily was different. Her quiet strength, her genuine smile, her eyes blending caution and hope, they stuck with him. He'd picked a spot called Mama's Kitchen, a cozy joint off the busy downtown. It wasn't a fancy place with white tablecloths, but a family-run eatery with wooden tables painted bright red, yellow, and green, and creaky chairs. Old photos and faded musician posters hung on the walls, and the smell of soup and grilled meat wafted from the kitchen. Jacob chose it deliberately. He wanted to show Emily he wasn't always part of the world of fine wines and boardrooms, that he remembered his roots. Days as a kid from a working-class neighborhood, running the streets and eating flatbreads for pennies. He arrived half an hour early, ordered a cold water, and sat by the window, watching women in colorful dresses, kids kicking a ball, and old men smoking pipes in the shade. Emily stood before a cracked mirror in her tiny room. She wore her best dress, simple but neat, blue with delicate embroidery she'd stitched herself along the hem. Her brothers, Kofi and Kwesi, had already run off to play with friends on a nearby lot, leaving her alone with her thoughts. She didn't know why she'd agreed to this. Jacob was from another world, wealthy, assured, with a life she could only imagine. His suits, his watch, his way of speaking screamed the gap between them. But his words at the market, his laugh when he burned his tongue, his gaze that met hers as an equal, they piqued her curiosity. She wanted to know who he really was, and maybe prove to herself she was worth something, that her life wasn't just endless work and caring for her brothers. She left the house, clutching a worn bag, and boarded a minibus, an old peeling van packed with people. The seats were hard, the windows stuck shut, and the smell of sweat mixed with spices from someone's basket. The ride to Mama's Kitchen took half an hour, her heart racing the whole way. What if he'd changed his mind? What if it was a joke? She pictured arriving to find him gone, returning home humiliated. But when she stepped inside, He was there, by the window, looking out. Seeing her, he smiled and stood, no trace of mockery in his expression. "You came," he said, relief clear in his voice. "You said Kumasi's not that big," she replied with a small smile, hiding her nerves. They sat, and soon steaming bowls of soup arrived, thick with yam chunks and peanut paste, spiced with pepper and ginger, alongside a basket of warm, crispy flatbreads. Emily tasted the soup and nodded. "This is good. Better than our restaurant." "Told you," Jacob winked. "Sometimes simple spots beat fancy halls. They cook with heart here." They ate and talked. At first, it was about food. Emily shared how her mother taught her to cook, standing by the stove stirring soup while her mom chopped vegetables. She mentioned tweaking recipes with spices to surprise her brothers. Jacob listened closely, asking questions, and she realized she was talking more than usual. Her voice grew livelier as she recounted adding too much pepper to chicken once, making Kofi cough for half an hour, but still finish it. Jacob laughed, and the warmth of it drew a smile from her. He told her about his company, starting with a small shed and a few barrels of palm oil his father bought with their last savings. At 20, he'd driven to villages, convincing farmers to sell him palm fruits, sleeping in a truck to save money. Now his products sold across Ghana and beyond, Nigeria, Côte d'Ivoire. He didn't brag. His pride was in the work, not the wealth. "Did you always want to do this?" Emily asked, peering over her bowl. Jacob twirled his spoon, thinking. "Not really. As a kid, I wanted to be a teacher, teach kids to read, count, tell them about the world. But my dad said business was our family, our blood. I couldn't let him down." "Are you happy now?" Her question was simple, but stopped him cold. He looked at her, a shadow crossing his eyes. "Sometimes. Money, success, it's good. But there are days I sit in my office wondering, for what? I have everything, but no." He paused, searching for the word. "No meaning, I guess." Emily dropped her gaze to her bowl. "I get it. I don't have money, but I don't have meaning either. I want more, but everything holds me back. My brothers, the house, work. Sometimes it feels like I'm just running in circles." They fell silent, but it wasn't awkward. For the first time in years, Jacob felt he could be himself. Not a businessman, not a boss, just a person with dreams and doubts. Emily felt heard, not out of politeness, but because he cared. She looked up and asked, "What would you do if it wasn't business?" He smiled, tinged with sadness. "Go back to kids. Open a school, maybe in a village. Teach them what I know. You?" "Open a cafe," she said without hesitation. "Small, mine. Cook what I love for people who care about food, not status." Jacob nodded, studying her with fresh interest. "That's a good dream. And it's closer than you think." She shook her head, but a spark flickered in her eyes. They finished the soup, and he suggested, "Let's walk." "It's too early to head back." They stepped outside as the sun dipped low, painting the sky orange and pink. Kumasi didn't quiet down. Street musicians beat drums, women carried fruit baskets, and the smell of fried fish and flatbreads hung in the air. They strolled along the road, chatting about little things, the market's morning scent, kids stealing mangoes from stalls. Jacob shared how he once caught a thief and bought him a fruit instead of scolding him. Emily laughed and admitted she'd swiped a flatbread as a kid, but later returned to pay the vendor a coin. They reached a small park, a green patch with trees and benches where locals rested after work. Kids chased a homemade ball, old men sat in the shade, and couples whispered on benches. Jacob pointed to one. "Let's sit." Emily nodded, and they watched the sunset. He asked suddenly, "What's your favorite recipe?" "The one you cook best," she thought, then smiled. "Chicken with pepper and ginger. Mom taught me, but I added my own spices, coriander, a pinch of cinnamon. Always wanted to make it for someone special." Jacob turned to her, his gaze growing serious. "Then make it for me. Next time." Emily laughed, flustered. "You're serious? My place doesn't even have a decent stove, just an old gas burner that smokes." "Then at mine," he said without missing a beat. "I've got a kitchen, I'm not kidding." She studied him, searching for a joke, but his eyes held only warmth and expectation. She nodded. "Okay, but you're helping, and no complaining if you burn yourself." He laughed, easing the tension. "Deal. Just don't make me chop the peppers. I won't survive it again." They stayed in the park until dark, talking about childhood, dreams, what held them back and pushed them forward. Jacob told her how, at 12, he ran away to watch freight trains rumble through Kumasi, hiding in bushes until his father found him 2 hours later and chewed him out. Emily shared how she secretly cooked flatbreads to sell, buying school notebooks for her brothers, and nearly burned the house down when oil caught fire on the stove. Their worlds differed. He grew up with modest means but ambition, she in poverty, where every day was a fight. Yet their stories shared a stubborn streak, a drive to prove they could do more. As the sun set and streetlights flickered on, Jacob walked her to the minibus stop. Night fell over Kumasi, stars dotting the sky. "Thanks for today," Emily said, looking at him. "I haven't laughed like that in a long time." "I should be thanking you," he replied. "See you soon. Don't forget the chicken." She smiled and boarded the bus. Jacob watched her go, feeling for the first time in years that his life could be more than work and money. He walked home, ignoring Amos waiting in the car nearby. He needed time to process the day. The next day, Emily returned to her routine at golden sunset. The kitchen hummed, cooks yelled, knives clacked, pans hissed. She peeled vegetables, chopped herbs, watched boiling pots, but something had shifted inside her. Yesterday with Jacob, his laugh, his questions, his gaze, made her feel more than a shadow in the kitchen. She started humming an old song her mom loved, a wordless tune full of warmth. Even Kwame noticed. "What's with you today?" he grumbled, wiping his hands on his apron. "Singing like you're paid for it." "Just in a good mood," she said, eyes down, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Kwame muttered something and turned away, but his tone lacked its usual bite. Emily worked faster than usual, even finding a moment to jot a new recipe in her notebook, something with fish and spices she'd thought up in the ride home. Her mind kept drifting to Jacob. Why did he talk to her so easily? Why did he look at her like she mattered? She was used to being invisible, to Kwame, to customers, even to her brothers, who took her care for granted. But with Jacob, she felt alive. Jacob spent the morning in his office but was distracted. He canceled a meeting, telling Linda he needed time to think. She raised an eyebrow. He never skipped work to think, but said nothing, just brought him coffee. He sat at his desk, staring at the city through the glass wall, replaying every word from Emily. Her cafe dreams, her quiet resolve, her laugh when he fumbled with a spoon. She wasn't like his usual crowd, no calculation, just honesty. It scared him. He was used to control, business, relationships, life. With partners, he knew what to expect. Money, gain, sometimes betrayal. With women, attention, flirtation, empty promises. But with Emily, he didn't know what was coming, and it threw him off balance. That evening, he called his old school friend Samuel, now an attorney in Accra. They rarely talked, but Samuel always cut straight. "I met someone," Jacob said, sitting on his couch with a glass of water. "About time." Samuel laughed. "Who is she? Minister's daughter? Model? Businesswoman with $1 million deal?" "Number. She's regular, works in a kitchen, but she's not like anyone else." Samuel whistled. "You're falling for a cook? That's not like you, Jacob." "I'm not falling," he snapped, but his voice betrayed doubt. "She's just interesting, easy to be around." Samuel got serious. "Listen, if she's got you thinking beyond work, hold on to her. You've been alone too long. I remember you saying you didn't need a family, that business was everything. But you're not made of steel, man." "I'm not alone," Jacob countered. "I've got the company, people." "That's not the same, and you know it," Samuel cut in. "Give her a chance, and yourself too." Jacob hung up, but the words stuck. He was alone, not in terms of women, but real connection. His life was a machine. Office, meetings, contracts, home. No warmth. Emily, without knowing it, was filling that void, and he didn't know whether to embrace it or fear it. A few days later, he found her again at Kejetiah Market. She was buying ginger and peppers, haggling with a short, loud vendor trying to push an extra bag. Seeing Jacob, she froze, then smiled, no longer guarded. "You weren't kidding about the chicken, huh?" she asked as he approached. "Never joke about food," he grinned. "How about tomorrow? My place. I'll get everything we need." Emily hesitated. Going to his home felt like too much. She pictured his world, big house, fancy furniture, maybe servants, and felt small, out of place. But his gaze, his voice, his easy smile. She nodded. "Okay, but I cook, you just help. No arguing." He raised his hands in mock surrender. "I'm outmatched. Tomorrow at 6. I'll send you the address." The next day, Emily stood outside his house, a large 2-story building with white walls and wide windows, framed by a low fence. She wore her blue dress again, her only good one, clutching her bag with the recipe notebook. Her heart raced as she rang the bell. Jacob opened the door, dressed in a plain black t-shirt and jeans. First time she'd seen him casual. He looked younger, simpler, and it eased her a bit. "Welcome," he said, stepping aside. The house was as she'd imagined, but not overly lavish. A living room with a couch and big TV, bookshelves, a couple of paintings. The kitchen was huge, gleaming counters, a new stove, cabinets full of dishes, a humming fridge. Emily froze, taking it in. "This is bigger than my whole room," she blurted. Jacob laughed. "Then let's make it useful. What do I do?" They started cooking. Emily took charge, showing him how to cut chicken, grate ginger, mix spices, pepper, coriander, a dash of cinnamon. Jacob followed her lead, nearly nicking himself with the knife a couple times. When he rubbed his eyes after handling pepper and winced, she laughed and handed him water. "Told you," she said, her laughter light, and he grinned back. The smell of chicken with ginger and pepper filled the kitchen. They fried the meat, added vegetables, tasted the sauce, and Emily caught herself enjoying it, working side by side, watching him try. Jacob felt oddly at ease, too. He was used to giving orders, not taking them, but her voice, her confidence in the kitchen, made him comply with a smile. When it was ready, they ate right there at the kitchen counter on high stools. The food was better than any restaurant. Juicy chicken, spicy sauce, fragrant spices. Jacob watched her eat and said, "You could open your own place. Seriously, this is incredible." Emily shook her head, setting down her fork. "I don't have money or time. It's just a dream." "Dreams don't have to stay dreams," he said quietly. "I can help, give you a start." She froze, staring at him. "Why are you doing this? Why me?" Jacob set his fork down and met her eyes. "Because you're real. Everyone around me plays games, money, status, power. But you're just you. And with you, I feel alive." Emily didn't know what to say. His words were simple, but struck deep. She looked down, but he took her hand, gently, firmly. "I'm not joking, Emily. Let me show you that you can do more, that we can be more." She met his gaze, hope flickering in her eyes. For the first time, she believed her life could change, and that he could be part of it. They sat in silence, hands clasped, the scent of chicken lingering, and the gap between their worlds felt less impossible. Kumasi woke to the sounds of morning bustle. Kejetiah Market buzzed. Traders laid out goods, motorcycles roared through the crowd, and the smell of fried fish and spices rose over the streets. Emily left home earlier than usual, her steps light despite the fatigue from last night at Jacob's. His words, "Let me show you that you can do more," echoed in her mind, keeping her awake. She didn't know what to think. Jacob was an outsider from a world she'd never touched, but he looked at her like she was its center. It scared her and lit a spark of hope she'd long buried. She boarded a minibus to Golden Sunset. Today was another shift, peeling vegetables, tending pots, enduring Kwame's shouts. But something inside her had shifted. She no longer felt like just a shadow. Last night with Jacob, their laughter in the kitchen, his sincerity, the taste of their chicken, made her dreams feel possible. She pulled out her worn notebook and scribbled ideas, recipes for a cafe she might one day own, fish with ginger and lemon, flatbreads with spicy sauce, yam soup with spices. Her handwriting was shaky, but each line breathed confidence. Meanwhile, Jacob sat in his office, staring at the city through the glass wall. His desk was piled with papers, contracts, reports, supplier letters, but he couldn't focus. Last night with Emily had flipped something in him. He was used to a life he controlled, business, meetings, money. But she was unpredictable. Her modesty, her passion for cooking, her quiet strength pulled him like a magnet. He'd promised to help with her dream, and it wasn't empty talk. He had the cash, connections, know-how. He could get her started, rent a space, buy equipment, find suppliers. But it wasn't just about money. It was about proving, to her and himself, that he could be more than a palm oil empire. Linda walked in with coffee and a stack of mail. "You're off today," she noted, setting the cup down. "Something up?" "No, I'm fine," he said, but his voice was distant. She squinted. "It's that girl from the market, isn't it? You mentioned her last week." Jacob glanced at her but didn't deny it. "Maybe. She's different." Linda smiled. "Good to see someone shake you up, but don't forget the investor meeting at 2. He nodded, and she left. Jacob leaned back, staring at the cooling coffee. His feelings for Emily weren't just curiosity. They ran deeper, something he hadn't felt in years. But doubts crept in. Was he rushing? Was she ready for his world? Or he for hers? He shook it off and grabbed his phone, texting her, "How's it going? Thinking about the chicken?" He smiled as he sent it and turned back to work, but his mind stayed with her. Emily got the text during her lunch break. She sat in a kitchen corner, nibbling a flatbread, hiding her phone from Kwame, who hated distractions. Seeing Jacob's name, she paused, then smiled. "Going good. Chicken was just the start," she typed back, her cheeks warming. She sent it and tucked the phone away, but her heart beat faster. Kwame caught her smile and snapped, "What are you grinning at?" "Go clean the fish. Customers are waiting." She nodded and got up, but even his gruffness couldn't dim her mood. The shift dragged. Emily cleaned fish, chopped vegetables, stirred soup as the kitchen roared around her. But her thoughts were elsewhere. With Jacob, last night, his offer to help. She pictured her cafe, small, cozy, with wooden tables and the smell of her food. Maybe windows facing the street so passers-by could watch her cook. She got so lost in it that she didn't notice Kwame behind her. "Daydreaming again," he barked, slamming a hand on the counter. "If you don't need this job, say it." Emily flinched and dropped her eyes. "Sorry, Kwame. I was just thinking." "Thinking?" he muttered. "Work, or I'll find someone else." She nodded and returned to the fish, but his words stung. He was right. She wasn't focused, but the idea of being stuck here forever pressed harder. Jacob offered help, but what if it was just talk? She didn't want to be naive. She needed to talk to him, see if he meant it. That night, after her shift, she texted him, "Can we meet tomorrow?" "Need to talk." His reply came fast. "Sure. Tomorrow at 6, my place. Come." She exhaled, feeling relief and nerves. Tomorrow would clarify things. Jacob waited eagerly. He'd spent the day in the office, his mind on Emily. After work, he hit Kejetiah Market, buying fresh fish, vegetables, and spices, in case she wanted to cook again. He wanted to prove his words weren't hollow. At home, he tidied the kitchen, set out a water bottle, and turned on the radio, an old set he rarely used. Local drum beats filled the room, adding warmth. When Emily rang the bell, he opened the door quick. She stood there in her blue dress, bag in hand, looking tense. "Hey," he said, letting her in. "Good to see you." "Hey," she replied, her smile tight. They went to the kitchen, and he offered water. She took the glass but didn't drink, looking at him straight. "I wanted to talk about what you said, helping me. Are you serious?" Jacob nodded, sitting across from her. "Dead serious. I can find you a spot for a cafe, help with money, suppliers. I've got what it takes to make it work." Emily gripped the glass harder. "But why? You hardly know me. I don't want to owe you, and I don't want this to be charity." He leaned forward, meeting her eyes. "It's not charity. I believe in you, Emily. You're talented. I've tasted your food, seen how you talk about cooking. It's not just a dream. It's something you can do. And me. I want to be part of it." She shook her head. "What if it fails? I've got brothers. I can't take risks. And I'm not from your world, Jacob. You get that?" Her words hit him. He leaned back, thinking. "I get it. But I'm not asking you to drop everything now. Let's start small. A plan, a few steps. No pressure. It's your call." Emily's gaze softened. "Okay, but I want to do it myself. If you help, I'll pay you back." "Every cent," he smiled. "Deal. So what do you need for the cafe?" They spent the evening at the table, hashing out details. Emily pulled out her notebook, showed him recipes, described her vision, a cozy spot with simple, soulful food. Jacob listened, tossed out ideas, where to find a space, how to draw customers. He sketched a rough budget on a scrap of paper. For the first time, Emily felt her dream taking shape, and Jacob realized he was helping himself too. There was more to this than business, but it wasn't all smooth. The next day at Golden Sunset, Emily hit a snag. Kwame noticed her distraction, and his patience snapped. When she oversalted the soup, he exploded. "You think I'm here for your experiments? This is a restaurant, not your kitchen." "Sorry, Kwame, I'll fix it," she said, but he cut her off. "Fix it? You've been off for a week. If you don't want this job, leave." Emily froze. She wanted to argue, say she was trying, but the words stuck. She quietly fixed the soup, but inside she boiled. That night, she told Jacob over the phone. "He's right. I'm not focused," she admitted. "But I can't quit. I need the money." "Then don't quit yet," he said. "We'll figure it out. I'll talk to some people, see where we can start." But his certainty started to worry her. He made it sound easy, but for her, it was a gamble. She didn't want to lean on him, didn't want her dream to become his project. That night, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she was making a mistake. Meanwhile, Jacob faced his own trouble. The next week, Samuel showed up with news. "Your Tarkwa partner's playing dirty," he said, dropping a folder on the desk. "Selling oil to competitors cheap behind your back. If this gets out, your reputation's toast." Jacob frowned. "How long do we have?" 2 weeks, maybe less. Gotta move fast." It hit him harder than expected. His business was his rock, his shield. If it crumbled, what could he offer Emily? He spent the day in the office, digging through papers, calling suppliers, searching for a fix. But Emily stayed on his mind. He didn't want her to see him weak. Days later, they met again, in the park where they'd sat before. Emily looked tired, Jacob tense. She told him about Kwame, her fear of losing her job. He shared his business woes, keeping it vague. "We'll manage," he said, but his voice lacked its usual strength. Emily studied him. "What if we don't? I don't want you risking stuff for me." "It's not just for you," he replied. "It's for us." She stilled. Us. The word hung there, heavy, and they both felt it. Jacob took her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. They sat quietly, watching the sunset, knowing their bond was growing beyond dreams and plans. But shadows, her fear, his troubles, were starting to close in. Kumasi thrummed under the evening sun, sinking low and painting the sky in warm orange and pink. Kejetiah Market still pulsed. Traders packed up stalls, stowing mangoes, peppers, and dried fish in baskets. Motorcycles roared through the crowd, and the smell of fried food and spices mixed with dust, kicked up by a light breeze. Emily walked home from Golden Sunset, her steps heavy, shoulders slumped under an unseen weight of exhaustion and thoughts. The past few days had been rough. Kwame was unbearable, yelling over every slip, soup too salty, fish undercooked. But her mind wasn't on work, it was on Jacob, the man who'd crashed into her life from the market and turned it upside down. His words from their last park talk, "It's for us," rang in her head, an echo she couldn't shake. They brought warmth, but also a tightness in her chest. She wasn't sure she was ready for an us. Her life was fragile, like a thin clay bowl ready to shatter with one wrong move. She had Kofi and Kwesi counting on her, a job keeping them afloat, and rent debts she paid bit by bit. Jacob offered a dream, a cafe, her own place to cook and be herself. But what if it collapsed, dragging everything down? She couldn't risk it, yet she couldn't stop thinking of his eyes, his voice, how he looked at her like she was the only person in this noisy city. At home, her brothers waited. She opened the door to their tiny room, and Kofi ran up, his skinny legs thumping the worn floor. "Emily, did you bring food?" he asked, eyes bright with hope. She pulled a couple of flatbreads wrapped in paper from her bag, kitchen leftovers. "This is it. Eat slow. I'll get more tomorrow," she said, forcing cheer. Kwesi sat cross-legged on the floor, playing with homemade cards from old boxes. He looked at her closely. "You look beat. Kwame yelling again?" Emily shook her head, faking a smile. "Just work. It's fine. Go to bed. It's late." But it wasn't fine. She waited until her brothers curled up on their blanket in the corner, then lay on her mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling. A streetlight's glow slipped through a curtain gap, striping the wall. She thought of Jacob, his confidence, warm voice, the way he'd held her hand, saying she made him feel alive. It was a light at the tunnel's end, but the tunnel was dark, and she feared the light might fade. She grabbed her worn recipe notebook and flipped through it. Fish with ginger, flatbreads with sauce, yam soup, each entry a piece of her dream. But tonight, the lines blurred, and she shut it, pressing it to her chest. She had to decide, trust Jacob or step back. Meanwhile, Jacob worked late in his office. The lamp's light hit his desk, cluttered with papers, contracts, reports, supplier letters, but his eyes were on the window, where Kumasi's lights twinkled in the dark. The Tarkwa partner issue was bad. Samuel arrived with a folder and cold tea. "Edwin didn't just sell oil to competitors," he said, flipping pages. "He faked contracts to hide losses. If this leaks, Golden Branch loses clients, and your rep's done." Jacob rubbed his temples. "How much time?" "A week, maybe 2, Samuel replied. "Best to deal with him direct." Jacob nodded. "I'll go tomorrow. If he doesn't back off, I'm cutting ties." Samuel eyed him. "You're off your game. It's her, right? Market girl?" Jacob sighed. "Yeah, promised her a cafe. But if the business tanks, what do I give?" "Yourself," Samuel said, plain. "She's not after your wallet." Jacob didn't reply, but it hit home. Emily was different, honest, stubborn, with a dream in her eyes. She'd become more than a market acquaintance. He cleared the papers and decided, fix Tarkwa, then her. Pouring water, he sat on the couch, staring at the city. His thoughts were with Emily, her laugh, quiet voice, hand in his. He didn't want to let her down. Next day, he drove to Tarkwa. The road was dusty, the SUV bouncing over potholes. The meeting with Edwin was tense in a stuffy office amid oil crates. Edwin squirmed. "It's business, Jacob. Prices dropped. I improvised." "At my expense," Jacob snapped. "Sold my oil cheap to competitors and faked the books." Edwin paled. "Let's settle. I'll pay half now, rest later." "All now," Jacob said firm, "or my lawyers start tomorrow." Edwin caved. By evening, he wired some cash, and the partnership ended. Jacob got back to Kumasi late, head pounding but relieved. The business held. At home, he texted Emily. "All good. Tomorrow at 6?" She replied, "Yes." Emily spent the day at Golden Sunset, her mind elsewhere. Kwame snapped at her slow yam peeling, but she answered soft. During a break, she stepped out for air and spotted an old shop across the street with a "For Rent" sign. Small, cracked windows, but her heart jumped. She saw it painted bright, with wooden tables, her food's aroma wafting. She snapped a photo and sent it to Jacob. "What do you think?" He texted back, "It's a start." She smiled, pocketing the phone, and fear eased. The next evening, she arrived at his place in her blue dress, clutching her recipe bag. Jacob opened the door, smiling. "Hey, good to see you." "Hey," she said, reserved. They sat in the living room, and she got to it. "I want the cafe." "But I'm scared. You won't ditch me?" "I won't," he said, serious. Went to Tarkwa yesterday, fixed the partner mess. I'll handle us too. Trust me? She nodded. But I want to do it together. Then together, he smiled. Tomorrow we'll check the spot. They talked details over the table. Emily showed recipes, described her cafe. Cozy, simple food with soul. Jacob sketched a budget. They debated a sign, but it was friendly. By 10, she said, "Didn't think this'd get real." "It's real 'cause you want it," he replied. Next day, they saw the space. Small, dusty windows, creaky floor, but Emily saw promise. Jacob said, "Lots of work, but it's solid." "I want to try," she replied. They haggled the rent down and signed a lease within a week. Renovations started. Emily painted walls yellow. Jacob fixed tables. Kofi and Kwesi pitched in. 2 weeks later, Sunrise Kitchen opened. The food, chicken with pepper, flatbreads, soup, sold out in an hour, customers raving. After closing, Jacob hugged her. "You did it." "We did," she corrected. He kissed her, slow, tender, sure. Their first, a promise of more. Months later, the cafe thrived. Emily quit Golden Sunset, hired an assistant, Amma, and started repaying Jacob. He steadied his business and frequented the cafe. Their bond deepened. One day, she said, "Thought you were just a market guy." "And you're everything," he laughed. Kumasi hummed outside, but they'd found each other, building something beyond a dream. Emily stood at the stove in Sunrise Kitchen, stirring yam soup in a large pot. Heat from the gas burner hit her face, sweat trickling down her temples. A month had passed since the cafe opened, and every day was a marathon. Customers flooded in, plates of chicken and flatbreads vanished instantly, and the smells of ginger and pepper soaked into everything. Amma, her assistant, a skinny, quick girl, scaled fish at the sink, humming an old tune. The success was staggering, but exhaustion weighed her down like a heavy load. The door chimed, and Jacob walked in, brushing dust off his shirt. He carried a bag with greens and a couple of mangoes. "Hey, chef," he said, setting it on the table. "Thought you could use these." Emily wiped her hands on her apron, hiding a smile. "What? You're my supplier now. What about your empire?" "Still standing," he smirked. "It's more interesting here." Amma giggled, still at the fish. "He's right. It smells better than an office." Emily rolled her eyes, but something stirred inside. Jacob had become part of her life, not just a backer, but someone close. Their kiss on opening day had started something new, though they both moved cautiously, wary of breaking their fragile us. "Sit," she said. "Soup's ready. You're tasting first." He sat, watching her deftly add salt and spices. Over these weeks, Emily had changed. There was a new confidence in her, not just survival, but belief. Jacob liked it. The soup was spicy, softened by yam. He nodded. "You could bottle this. It's gold." "I'd settle for surviving a day," she muttered, but her cheeks flushed. They laughed, but Emily felt the strain. The cafe thrived, but the work was relentless. She rose before dawn, cooked, served, and tallied receipts in an old notebook until midnight. Kofi and Kwesi helped on weekends, but school kept them busy. She paid Jacob back bit by bit, but the stove was smoking, and rent crept up. Jacob saw her fatigue, shadows under her eyes, fewer smiles. He wanted to help, but knew she needed care. "Thought about expanding?" he asked when Amma left to scrub the pot. "More staff? A second spot?" Emily froze, rag in hand. "I'm barely managing this. And money? I'm still paying you." "Not now," he clarified. "Future. You're building something real. I could help. As a partner." She looked at him. "Partner in business, or more?" Both, he smiled. But let's start with business. I've got connections. You've got talent. Emily sat across from him. The idea tempted her, but scared her too. Sunrise Kitchen was her baby, and losing control frightened her. What if their us collapsed, dragging it down? Let me think, she said. This isn't just food. It's my life. I get it, he nodded. No pressure. That night, she couldn't sleep, staring at the ceiling. Jacob had become her world, and it terrified her, but his belief warmed her. Morning found Jacob in his office, gazing through the glass wall. Papers buried his desk, but his mind was on Emily. Golden Branch had survived Tarqua, but he felt empty inside. Emily filled that, her stubbornness, laughter, dreams. He texted her, "How's it going?" "Soup left?" She replied, "Gone. Come try the fish." That evening, he arrived at the cafe. Customers ate and chatted. Emily fried fish, lemon, ginger, pepper. He tasted it and said, "You're a magician." "Don't overdo it," she brushed off, smiling. As the cafe emptied, he raised the partnership again. "We could do more, another cafe, delivery. You're not alone." "I'm scared of losing this. Or you," she admitted. He stepped closer. "You won't lose me. You matter to me." She nodded. He hugged her. They agreed to try, slowly, with her in charge. Jacob found a spot for a second cafe, an old warehouse near the market. They painted walls, fixed tables. Kofi and Kwesi helped, laughing at Jacob's clumsy hammering. Emily hired Kojo, a quiet guy, for Sunrise Kitchen. They planned menus, budgets, debated signs. But troubles mounted. The first cafe's stove broke, smoke chasing out customers. Jacob brought a new one. "An investment," he said. "I'll add it to the debt," she grumbled. At home, Kwesi grew distant. At 17, he skipped school, smoked. Emily caught him with a cigarette. "I work for you, and this," she yelled. "You're always busy," he snapped. His words stung. She cried that night, feeling him slip away. Jacob noticed her worry. "Kwesi?" he asked, painting the new cafe. "Yes," she nodded. "Maybe I shouldn't have started this." "You're building a future," he said. "I'll talk to him." He took Kwesi to the park, handed him a mango. "Mad at her?" "She's never around," Kwesi muttered. "She wants better for you," Jacob said. "But you're right. She needs to be closer. Don't ditch school." Kwesi softened, hugged Emily at home. Jacob had helped. Sunset Bites opened 2 months later, small, with a terrace. Lemon fish and flatbreads sold out fast. Emily ran between cafes. Jacob handled accounts. Their partnership worked. Their bond deepened. Evenings, they cooked at his place or sat in the park. One night on the terrace, she said, "Didn't think you'd be here with me. You changed me," he replied, taking her hand. A month later, Golden Branch faltered. A competitor from Accra cut prices. Jacob hid it, but Emily saw his exhaustion. "Talk," she demanded. He explained. Clients leaving, losses looming. "What's the plan?" "Fight," he said. "Find a market." She hugged him. He tapped Nigeria for buyers. She started delivery at Sunrise Kitchen. They pulled through. A year later, they celebrated Sunset Bites' anniversary. The cafe buzzed. Kofi and Kwesi served. Customers laughed. Jacob raised a juice glass. "To you. To us." "To us," she smiled. They kissed to applause. Their world became a home where dreams came true, and love grew from a chance meeting.